All right, we are back once again, and I start this the same way every time. We are back once again on the Ultimate Sports Network. Hello, everybody. We are here on the Pacific Coast, all of us at the same time in different locations, but we are on PST time. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello there.
In case you don't know, Mr. Farmer was off at the branch office in Seattle today.
Wow.
We're gonna talk a little bit about a lot today, or a lot about a little. Depends on how you look at it. Let's start with what may be a trend. I don't know. The DQ with the Warrington-Lara fight. One of those things where it seems like it's legitimate, but one of those things where we've seen this a little bit more often, maybe than we've seen in the past. I don't know. Charles, what did you think had happened there?
Well, one, I knew something crazy must have happened because of the factor how much hype this third fight had, right? When you come up on it, or this fight. And I knew something bizarre had happened, and I kept looking around because I didn't get a chance to see it. So I was looking, because one of the time really messed me up. I was looking, man, what time does it come on? I know it comes at an obscure time. And then, of course, to find out everything after the fact, I look at, had to go to Matchboxing to find out the truth, right? So, which was cool. But I knew something bizarre had happened because the way that it was stopped so quickly and the way they was mentioned about what had happened. So I knew something bizarre. I knew it wasn't good, but I also knew too that we didn't not receive the result that everybody wanted. So that meant that another fight was coming up, because I think it would have been devastating, or it was one-sided. You would have heard that. It would have been more reaction. But the way that it came out when I received the news, I was like, damn, that's over. The first thing I thought about was that. And I clicked looking around, I couldn't find it. And then here comes Matchboxing pops up. And I was like, okay, let me go on over here and see what Matchboxing popped up with it. They have my information. And I was like, now I can go deeper. But yeah, I knew something bizarre had happened. And it was just one of those things that I was really bummed, but then I wasn't really bummed. I'm like, well, shit, I didn't really miss that much. I didn't been a great fight, and I didn't see it live. I just finally been a little bit more pissed. So I felt John's pain, because I know John is, really up on it and everything. But I'm like, well, he didn't get to see everything. So anyway, that's just a hater's mentality. But what can I say? I'm out here with them now. So here we go.
Well, and since we're doing the name dropping, this is John from Matchboxing, who's going to talk about what he saw and wrote for Matchboxing, and then this article appeared on Matchboxing. So, speaking with no further ado, here's John from Matchboxing. John, no, but seriously, as we were looking at a fight that we were questioning a lot of things about what could happen, what might happen, what was going to happen for the last few weeks. Give us a basic overview of how it was playing out. We know we were talking about the mentality of Warrington. Was he going to be able to stick his face in there? Was he going to do that? All that good, fun stuff. Obviously, we know that the stoppage was in the second round, correct? My brain just stopped. What was happening leading up to that?
It was after the second round. Yeah, it was. This is why it was going to be such an intriguing fight, because Warrington started really well. He looked really good in the first round. He had his guard up higher, notice right away when he says, I'm not going to get hit with that left hook.
Right.
So, and he was boxing well. He was moving a lot more. Obviously, he did take note what happened to him in the first fight, and he did pretty much what we were talking about in our last show, that he had to fight differently. He couldn't bomb with Lara. Lara's got power. Lara's stronger than him. He's got the power. Warrington doesn't. So he's a smart kid, and he's a warrior, though. So he's moving around, he's fighting, but he's throwing punches. So the first round's pretty good. And when the round ends, he goes like that, meaning that tells you a little mentality about what a fighter's thinking. I mean, you're thinking, how could a former champion say, hey, I made it through the first round? But it wasn't that. It was so much, it was like, yeah, I can beat this guy. I got it.
Right.
Well, in the second round, Lara started to start warming up. And it wasn't his left hook that clipped Warrington, it was right hand. And I could tell that he was, I don't think he was buzzed, but he was surprised, because you're training all these weeks for a left hook
to stay away from this, and you come
right. So you got you right here, so you don't get hit with it, right? But here comes Lara, kind of fainting, and he hit him, and you could tell Warrington was like, what the hell was that? So at the end of, and then the butt happens.
Yeah.
And the rhythm was just starting to get into a rhythm because Warrington was fighting back. It wasn't like the second round Lara won it easy. Some people think that Warrington even won the second round. I might have given it to Lara, but we were just heating up, and then it's over.
Yeah.
And it was so, and it the disappointing part about it to me was that just those 2 rounds told me, I think, that this was going to be a really, really good fight. And there was no way Warrington was going to get the kind of revenge that a lot of his fans wanted, where he was just going to blow out Lara and win an easy decision. No. I think in 2 rounds, Lara proved that he's the real deal. Not that he's a great fighter or anything, but whenever he fights Warrington, it's going to be tough on Warrington. That's the way that's what I saw for 2 rounds. Now, Warrington, I still think he probably would have won. He probably would have won by decision, like I had said last week. I say probably, because if he started to when he slowed down a little, didn't move as much, then Lara started coming on, and Warrington might have needed a plan B or C on this, because Lara, it's that old equalizer, Frankie Charles. You know, he's got that power, and if you really can't take the power that well, one punch and you're a little.
Well, it's also if you've tasted the power.
Yes.
And you know, and especially as we were talking about before, you tasted the power and it was devastating. Somewhere in the back of your head is like, oh, here it comes again. So
yeah, and that's why I think he went like this. You know, I think he proved himself at the end of the first round. Look, I can beat this guy. And in the second round, he's like, whoa, yeah, I can beat him, but it's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Charles, now, and I know there's no quick fix to this, and obviously, if something happens, something happens. And I know there was a point where we went to thumbless gloves because people were getting thumbed a lot, or it was enough for it to be a problem, you know, and all these things. Is this just the nature of the sport, or is this something that we can figure out? Hey, we can't have a fight that we spent all this time and energy and money and everything trying to put on, and because of an accidental butt, fight's over. I mean, this is the main event. This is the card. Is there? Right. Should we be thinking that way? Because I remember when we went to the thumbless clubs, like, what's stupid? Oh, okay, it works. So is it maybe, I don't know, headgear? Is there something that we should do or should think about? Yeah, I know you're shaking your head, and I am too, but what do we do? Or can we do anything? Is this part of the sport?
Well, I think it's part of the sport, and the reason why I say that is because sometimes when you take precautions, even in the most dangerous situations, right, things happen, and I think this is just one of those scenarios where they're trying to do some things. Boxing has always been this way. If you put headgear on, even though it will save perhaps some people to make them a lot healthier because it will lessen the blows. This true sport that a lot of the fans have watched for years, they probably would be crying about that because this is what they're accustomed to. And unfortunately, in such a brutal and violent sport, a lot of people are not really worried about the health of people and their outcomes afterwards. They want the action in the ring at that point, which is what they deliver. But to get to your point, I think you just gotta. It happens, right? It happens. I know a lot of hype and everything, main events, whatnot. It happens. Things happen that we aren't able to foresee. And as John mentioned, and you mentioned before too, it's not that it wasn't a great fight. It was actually turned into be an awesome fight.
Right.
Things happen, but I think the problem that we have now is there's so many questions, there's so many maybes, and so much inconsistency with quality bouts that when we lose one, we lose our freaking minds because we don't know when the next one's coming up. And I think that's a major problem. But if you had a bunch of fights scheduled, go, oh, well, damn, that's messed up. I mean, I really wanted to see that. I'm sorry it ended the way that it did. But wait a minute, next week, we have such and such. Following week, we have 3 things in the net or 4 things in the next month to be ready for. And I think that's where the frustration comes, because we're going to talk a little later on too about Fury, you know, and Wilder. You know, it was postponed the first time, and now we haven't heard a lot, and a lot of questions are up. So, and now we just come off of a stoppage, you know, because of something that happened, kind of a fluke stoppage, to a fluke accident. And now we're waiting again. So it's like, okay, you mentioned some other thing you're going to bring up, but it's like, well, damn, if I had more consistency, I wouldn't worry about it. I'll be like, okay, well, I missed that one, or it would stop. Now I'm going to get ready for Saturday or 2 Saturdays from now because I'm excited because you still got me. You still got me the buzz. And if I can get the same thing that I got from that before, hell, I'm amped up for the next 3 months. So I think that is a major issue.
Well, John, one of the things that I'm thinking about is I'm going to use a football reference here, and we've instituted the penalties and suspensions or disqualifications for targeting. Now, a lot of the players, we were talking earlier about the sports we loved when we were growing up and the players and all that. A lot of the players that played when we were growing up couldn't play in this day and age or couldn't play the way they played because of targeting, for example. And I'm going to the Ohio State game, for example, where the receiver actually is the one that put his head down, in my opinion. And then the defender came in and was trying to make a tackle, and all that was available for him to hit was the crown of the helmet on both sides. He's leading to make the tackle, and the guy's head comes down. So that's a question of whose fault is it, and defenseless receiver, and I'll get into that later. But the idea being, maybe we look at, instead of, I know we, hitting and holding and certain things go, okay, don't do that, don't hit low, that's a warning. Maybe we go to, we're taking away points for headbutts. If you're leading with your head, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way that you do it, because this seems to be a little more prevalent and a little more dangerous and a little more ridiculous that it happens not fight after fight, but if you're leading with your head, these things are going to happen. I don't know if you can outlaw it. I don't know if you can legislate, but is it something that maybe we can do a little bit better job on?
Well, and then it comes down to the ringside physician, Frank and Charles. When I was in L.A. in June, Jojo Diaz got a very bad cut over his eye, and it was very comparable to what happened to Lara, and they didn't stop it. They let the fight go, and he won. He won the fight. So when I saw it, I went, ugh. But I was hoping they'd at least let it go 4 rounds or 5 rounds so you could determine a winner, even if it was cheesy. They stopped it immediately. So it's like, but Frank, the other sports is true, because I don't think there's really anything. Oh yeah, they take points away for headbutting if it's not accidental or whatever. But how many times have you looked forward to watching a football game and you really like the quarterback and he gets hurt in the first quarter? Done.
Yeah.
It wasn't anybody's fault, really. It was just that he was standing in the pocket and somebody got hit into somebody. He came in low. He hit his knee. Done. It's like it happened to you got Joe Burrow last year. I was loving watching that kid playing quarterback. He's so poised. He got hit. And he crumbled. I went, oh, no. And you knew the way he got hit. It's a physical sport, is my point. Boxing, football, whatever. So I don't think there's any way. Like Warrington, was he leading with his head? Was he coming in? But he wasn't doing it on purpose. So the only way you might be able to stop that is the minute it happens once, you warn him immediately. Hey, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Warrington, that was part of his strategy, though. See, he was trying to get inside to grab Lara, like Muhammad used to do with Joe Frazier, and hold him, because he knew that that's Lara's game is bombing away. So it would really be hard to do anything about it. It is. I agree with Charles. It's part of the sport because it's physical. Same with basketball. How many times do you see, not as much of basketball, where a guy gets hurt, freakish injury, but the real physical sports like boxing and football, these things are going to happen, and the guy's going to be taken out. He's going to hurt his knee. Nobody's fault. He got hit wrong, and he's hurt. He's out of the game, and that's the same thing. The guy's eye they feel the doctor makes a decision. It was opened up right here. It was bad. Now, he didn't give the cut guy a chance. Some of those guys could do magic.
Do miracles, right.
And he didn't I think he should have gave him another round at least. That man behind me, they hadn't given him another round. He's not a southpaw, by the way, if anybody gets annoyed at seeing the picture. Just a picture. If they hadn't given him another round against Randy Turpin in the rematch, he'd have lost again. He was losing again. He knocked Randy Turpin out in the 10th round. So It's going to sound, I don't mean to sound mean about it, because Lara was in pain and his eye was swelling, but I don't think he would have minded, and Warrington would have minded, and or whatever, if they gave him another round or two, just to see if it got worse and give the Cup man a chance. But again, that's a personal interpretation, a decision you're going to make right then, and just you can't guarantee that.
Well, Charles, I'm going to go back to the football reference, and there's a regulatory body that says this is now illegal. You cannot tackle this way. You can't use the crown of the helmet. You can't use your face. You have to do this. You do that. You get disqualified. And now we see that as we teach tackling from youth league up, proper form. This is what you do. Is it possible that you say, if there was a regulatory body for boxing, which would be nice, that they say, okay, this kind of conduct you can't do. You can't lean with your head, put your head on his chest, and do that. You can't do that. If you do that, that's going to be a warning and a point deduction. Just like hitting low, okay, you were close to the belt line, then you hit low, warning, okay, take a point away. If you start from golden gloves up, saying you can't lead with your head that way, would that solve the problem? Or would it change the sport so much that it's no longer boxing, it's square dance?
Well, I don't know if it would change it to a point where it's square dance. Now, I do think it would change it somewhat, but then again, the change take a very long time to evolve. And I think one of the things we know now, people have been trying to kill boxing for years. People have said it's dead and it's going away or whatever. But I think part of it is now that they're living in it right now. And what boxing is, it's a reason why they tell the boxers to protect yourself at all times. It's that damn dangerous. So therefore, over the years, and you don't want people with the concussions they'd allowed and things, the Dooku Kims, may rest in peace, and so many other people that have been brutally damaged by the punches in the ring, and they still let it happen. I think it's improved a lot since then. But I will say that going into this, these warriors, male and female, know what they're putting on the line. So I'm not sure there's anything that you can do, because you wouldn't change the sport. Because you can say, don't lean with your head, right? Don't do this, don't do that. But it's accustomed to the styles. I mean, how many times have we seen a boxer or several boxers that will either, that you say, use their head butt, or they'll the favorite proverbial use their elbow to hit a guy or a girl or punch them in the eye, cut them up, or to the point of using something where you just do something that is a rapid punch. They're doing it, and the one thing I don't like, if you're gonna change the rules, is I hate that when they can hold and then you hitting the person in the face, in the head as you're holding them. I think that is so disgusting, but it's part of the game. So you gotta learn how to put your hand up, protect yourself, because that's what they're doing. They get away with it, they're gonna do it. But I think, to me, it also brings light, clarity, and it also brings respect to the people that get in it, because you survived all of the things that could happen to you, right? And this is happening, and you still win. That's why when you see that like that, knowing all of the craziness and the wildness that can occur and the danger in the ring, you got to say to yourself, damn, that dude or that woman I got much respect for him because of that sport. And I think the boxing fans still now still love it. And we're still hanging on. I don't know what new generation, I don't know how long it's going to last, but the old geezers and even some of the upcoming younger people that still like the boxing sport, they like it the way that it is. I mean, it can always be better. You can clean it up, but it's that thrill, man. It's that thrill of knowing, I think, and I get out this very quickly, I think it's the thrill of people that watch it, knowing what it takes to get in the ring, or have an idea, knowing, first of all, they couldn't do that, right? And you see somebody else deliver what they do, you're like, damn, that's amazing. And we're drawn to that because we're saying, ain't no way in hell I would get in there and do that. And to watch these individuals become masters at it, it's exciting. There's nothing like it. We know from back way 100 years ago or even longer, there's nothing like two people getting in the ring and throwing hands or feet or whatever they're doing. It doesn't make sense. The body's not supposed to take that. And for those that do it, we give them mad respect. So until they do something different, or I think it will change the sport. But right now, we living in the moment, man, and we don't know how many moments we have left.
Well, John, it's something we've mentioned any number of times that boxing is a sport of not many where you can go back and compare and contrast because it hasn't really changed much. 147 is 147 no matter what time it's been. If you weighed 147 in 1924, you weighed 147 in 2021, you'll weigh 147. So you can get, growth in this and that and all that stuff, but it all seems about the same. And the rules haven't changed that much. We go back to John does it in himself, and we go back to how the sport has changed through the course of time. Basically the only thing I can come up with that's really different is the rounds. Instead of it being unlimited rounds, you got to win by knockout, and going to 15 rounds, going to 12 rounds. I can't really, for a championship fight, I can't really think that there's a lot that has changed. So, as Charles said, you take the risk getting into the ring, and as someone who's bought a fight, you take the risk of watching this, and it may not go the full distance. It may be a actual knockout in the first 37 seconds. Is there a difference between a knockout and a TKO and all that? So are we asking for change where there's no change that needs to be made? Or is it maybe it should be tweaked just a little bit?
Well, speaking to what you said a few seconds ago, the changes are that, you have to go to the neutral corner when you knock a guy down, right? Jack Dempsey. And back in the day, they used to wear mostly 8-ounce gloves, and now they wear 10 and 12-ounce gloves. It's dangerous because if a guy is an aggressive fighter, how do you tell him not to lead with his head when he's not meaning to? How do you tell Joe Frazier to stop smoking?
Right.
You can't alter his style because you're worried that in the third round he's going to butt somebody. Warrington wasn't known as a headbutter. He's never had anybody say that he's a chronic headbutter. There is one guy that is a legend to a lot of people that it was a chronic headbutter, and that is the guy who was fighting this Saturday night, who's in his 50s, and he's a former heavyweight champion. He was known for leading with his head. Did anybody ever really say much about it? No.
Well, we did.
So the only thing I could think, Frank, real fast is you could possibly make it more important when you talk about the rules. You could say, look, like Warrington. Say Warrington is next fight. You say to him, if he fights Lara again, he goes, look, he had a stoppage in the last fight because of an accidental headbutt. Not pointing fingers, but I'm going to be watching you really closely. And if you do anything that I think could cause another headbutt, I'm going to step in and go, and Warrington's team will go, what? Blah, 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 blah. Maybe you could at least put it out there that things have changed a little as far as the awareness. Because, Warrington, I admired him even, he's another guy that, he's a guy that I was like, and then I ended up admiring him even more as he's gotten all out of his ability, and that's very, very worthwhile. But he apologized to all the fans, 20,000 fans. He said, I'm so gutted, I feel so bad. I wanted to give them their money back. He's a good guy, and so there was no malice there. That's the only thing I could think of, Frank. When you got two guys, physical, brutal sport like boxing, you really can't wear headgear because that's the amateurs do that. The pros is all about putting it out there. That's like Charles was saying. That's what we want to see. You can't do the headgear. You can't put 20-ounce gloves on them, put pillows on their hands. You can't do that. It's just one of those things that happens. Headbutts. I don't think it happens. It happens, but it doesn't happen chronically. I don't believe. I can't think of the one I saw with Jojo Diaz. Again, it went all the way. This was just a really bad anomaly where a big fight we had all been talking about, looking forward to, blah, 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 is cut short. And so it really makes it stand out about this issue, and really unfortunate.
It's almost as if there is a rule in place for headbutt. You're not supposed to headbutt, and if it's an intentional headbutt, that's one thing. So it's more of an enforcement of the rules, but an accidental butt's going to happen. Accidental clash head's going to happen. So
accidental.
I don't know if it's something where we have to make a mandate. I don't know if anyone can make a mandate because you got to go list of WBA fights, WBC fight, blah, 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 blah. So many things have to happen. But, I think it's something that we've just seen a few things in the last year or so. It's like, really? Oh, man, especially when we didn't have athletics and sports to watch. We get geared up for something and it just doesn't happen. So, all right, let's get off of that. Let's go to the sure thing that wasn't a sure thing. I guess maybe is the best way to put it. And we've been, we've said, and I've said it a number of times, we don't really follow women's boxing as much as maybe it should be, as we should. But, John, give us an idea of what happened with I guess we can't call it the Katie Taylor fight, but let's call it the Katie Taylor fight.
Yeah, it was Katie Taylor fight. She was expected to win, and she did. She pitched a shutout. She did. She looked good. She was fighting a featherweight who had moved up to lightweight to fight her. They don't have a lot of people to fight, so because the women, they're not a lot of boxers, as we know. So she's trying to fight all the champions. Supposed to fight Amanda Serrano next year in Madison Square Garden. That'd be huge. That would be a great way for her. She's 35 now. For her to get the big fights, and that's what she wants. I actually, and you guys know I've been crushing on Katie for years because I just admire her sportsmanship and she's such a great fighter.
Right.
But I think she's peaked. I do. I think in the last two fights I've seen a little bit of something. She's lost a little bit. I don't know if it's a little bit of speed. I don't know if it's a little bit of something, but maybe she hasn't been as motivated. But the previous fight against Jones, she barely won. She ran out of gas. Her reflexes weren't as sharp. She hasn't looked as sharp the last two fights. Right. And that's usually an age thing. That's what happens when and she's been fighting since she was 7 and 300 amateur fights, 19 professional fights. At some point, your body's going to start saying, she's been in some tough fights, even though she's undefeated. That tough lady, Pearson, really pushed her in both of those fights. I actually thought she might have lost the first one. So she wants to get. I think Eddie Hearn sees it too. That's why he's talking about Amanda Serrano again, because and next year, and that could be just what we talked about last week. They must have been watching our show again, guys, because that would be the headliner. That would be the ladies' main event. The main event would be Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano. Why not? So
Charles,
she won. She looked good, but like I said, I think she's. Hate to say it, Katie, but love you, girl.
Well, but hey, that's it's the reality of the situation.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to do this forever. But again, it was a fight worth watching.
Yes, it's always exciting. It's always good.
Speaking of fights worth watching, see how I weave this in seamlessly. I just thought of something. Now we have coming up on Friday, which is a weird thing in the first place, on ESPN Plus. Oscar Valdez against Robinson Conceicao. I think I got that right. Conceicao. There. Something like that. Anyhow, I need to take a Spanish class. Anyhow, where we were, Charles, are we where we were when we saw the Valdez fight against Burchell? Is this the same kind of thing where we overvalued one guy as opposed to the other undefeated fighter that's getting in the ring? Is it something where we said, well, this is the name we know, and this is not the name we know? Or is this Valdez all the way?
Well, that's hard to say, though. I mean, because anything can happen. I mean, we can forecast it or predict
That's a strong statement.
Well, but it's true. Anything can happen. I mean, there's no guarantees. But I'll say this, though. I'll go on this, the far as the limit is concerned, I'll go on this edge that if I had to choose one or lean a certain way, I would say Valdez, simply because of what he showed us before. And
right.
Granted, he might have a bad day, or his opponent might come up and you go, wow, that guy really impressive. But Valdez really, with the last time we saw him, he really showed us that he was the real deal, and he really wants to continue to stay at that level. Then I would tend to side with him because there's always a chance, but you almost have to kind of go off of what you've seen before. The unknown is you never know. I mean, we could always say we never thought Leon Spinks would give Muhammad Ali a chance, a fighting chance, and nail in a fight. So that's always out there. But going off of what we know or what we think we know, I would have to say Valdez simply because of the factor that one would think that winning that last fight, you know, in the way that he did, it's like, well, I'm not gonna take my foot off the gas, right? Because I know that there's some more other top-notch fights coming up. I can make a little more money, and I like the spotlight. So it's like one of them things. If he was waiting for his opportunity, he was hungry. It's like now I want to stay on top. But quirky things happen. But to answer your question, I would still say I'm rolling with Valdez.
Well, John, we're looking at something here that, again, these things always don't make a difference, but sometimes they do. Again, you know, Valdez is undefeated. Conceicao is undefeated. Valdez, this is a super featherweight fight. Valdez is 5'5.5". His opponent is 5'10.5". 4-inch reach difference. Those don't always make a difference, but does it make a difference? You know, there are a lot of things we're looking at here, and we're looking at a guy who, the last time that I heard of Conceicao was he was fighting in the bubble, and I didn't see the fight. He was on, I believe, he was on the undercard or something in the bubble, or one of those. Yeah, it was like last November, October, something like that, where I wasn't into it just yet. So, is this a guy that's got a chance, or is it? I mean, I don't know the question to ask here because I didn't know enough about Valdez before Valdez became Valdez to see if this other guy might be somebody as well.
Yeah, sure, he's got a chance. You know, it's possible with all the controversy with Valdez. You know, you guys know that he got the steroid deal there going on, tested positive to something called, what's it called, fentanyl, right? And it's so crazy. Vada says that it's a no-go, and Vada says, it doesn't matter if you're not in the competitive part, meaning you can take it a few days. It's like, you know, you guys got to get this straight. This is insane. So it might be that he could lose his focus, and because he's been getting criticized for weeks about this, and people have been calling him a disgrace. Tim Bradley, who, as we know, never has an opinion on anything, Tim said that he hopes he gets knocked out.
Wow.
And and Valdez, as we know, we've been raving about him. He's a great guy. He said it was in some herbal tea and didn't know it, and it's a weight suppressant, I guess. But Vada says no. So if you really want to be, this is boxing though, you really want to be consistent, the fight is postponed because of that. But no, it's going on. So does this guy Robson have a chance? Yeah, hell yeah, he has a chance if he can fight more, because Valdez is, you know, we know Valdez, forgetting all that other stuff, he's a fearless guy. He might be 5'5.5", the guy might be 5'10", but he'll get under those long arms and he'll start pounding away. And so it's another one of these. I hate these, but it looks like he should win. But I've seen him in other fights where he didn't look like he was on top of his game and he got knocked down. He barely won. So it's going to depend on the Valdez. The Valdez that won his last fight, that was the prime Valdez.
That dude was tough, yeah.
That dude was ready. He had something to prove. This one might be a little distracted. He's having to defend himself. I'm not a cheater. I'm not this. Who knows? You know, boxing is so, if this guy Robson starts hanging tough and really giving him a hard fight, who knows? But I'll say that I think Valdez will likely win. It could turn out to be a lot closer than we would normally have thought.
Well, it seems to me that it's one of those things where the unknown, as we were talking about earlier, the unknowns are greater than the knowns in this fight. Because let's look at the Valdez that's come about. We really don't know who he is. We know who we think he is because of the last fight. But what else has he accomplished up until then? You know, Scott Quigg and a bunch of other people that I don't know of. You know, going down to Jose Luis Ramirez back in 2015. If that's the Jose Luis Ramirez I think it is, okay, that's a pretty decent fight. But other than that, you know, this is a guy that's just kind of bloomed at the age of, what is he, 35, 30?
No, he's only 30. Yeah, he's 30.
But he's come out of, I don't call it nowhere, but he looked really good in the last fight that we saw against Burchell. So I don't know. Other side of it, we have a guy that's 5 inches taller, who's 32 years old, and he's 16-0.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what has he done? Where has he come from? So I think this will be interesting because there is so much we don't know about, but we also think we know something about it. So, Charles, I guess if we're going to say, put on your sports book hat, and I don't know what the odds are. I'm not, we're not condoning betting here, even though that's okay to do now.
I think it's 3-1.
3-1. Okay.
Valdez.
At 3-1. Valdez 3-1. Is that a good bet for you, Charles?
Well, it is, because you mentioned something though. I mean, you went back, you talked about we really don't know if Valdez fought anybody prior to this. We're really impressed by his record, but we do know this. We do know that when Valdez, money was on the line, and he fought perhaps one of the biggest fights of his life, he stepped up. And now you have it in a position where, we mentioned about the mentality and the state of this. For we could say, well, he might not be the same guy he was, or he may not be consistent. You could also flip that and say, again, being doubted, right? Somebody else is doubting him. And now he gets to come in against another undefeated fighter. Everybody's telling him he's too small. I mean, those are the other things too. You're on drugs and all this other stuff. So he could flip it again like he did last time and go, all right, I'm going to show y'all once again. And maybe he needs that. I mean, truthfully, you think about it. The last fight, everybody was telling him, ain't no way in hell you was going to win. He might need it again. And maybe, I'm not saying he does it on purpose, but maybe he needs a little controversy to go, because I'm one like that too. I mean, I think about me competing and stuff in life. You say something crazy, you say something I can't do. The more add fuel to the fire, I'm excited, ready to explode. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think 3-1 is a great situation, because I think part of it is, when you flip on the other side of the opponent, we can say, what has he done? Who has he fought? And we're only talking to a guy that's only had 16 fights, right? I think we really are quick to throw some people up there. Everybody's not Lomachenko, bro. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's not like that. Granted, 16-0 is nice, but there was a time where a real fighter, what we used to think back in the day, if we consider you to be legit and you were undefeated, you had to be about 24, 25-0. But that's old school. Now we have evolved where dude fight 12 fights, we tell him he's the greatest thing, and we want to put him in there with somebody. So I think it's a great bet. I think 3-1. I really don't have a lot of information on the opponent, but I do know what I saw from Valdez before, when his back was against the wall and the chips, were against him, and everybody's talking about that. So now that you said that, I might call some people and share that information. I said, I'm gonna. But I'm just saying, I might share that information with some people, because you never know. Every once in a while, we come up with some information. Some people, I don't know who they are. They're nameless. They find their way to the betting station and they make money. That's all I'm gonna leave that right there. I don't know anyone like that, but I'm just saying.
Well, and John, but also, and Charles, amongst other things that I was laughing with and not at him, some other things that he brought up was that, 16-0 at the age of 32.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Well, it's something's going. I don't know a lot about him. I'll admit it. Yeah. I don't. This would be that word that I used a few weeks ago. A showcase fight. Usually that they usually. Yeah. This would be a one that we think Valdez is going to win easy. The thing is that it's a fear of the unknown too, Frank Charles. You don't know what this guy could bring. He could be better than we think. 16-0 with 32 at 32. You look at that and go, 32 and you've only had 16 fights? What's going on? And that's not Lomachenko. We know why Lomachenko's only had 16 or 17 fights. He started late, blah, blah, blah. We know that. I don't know. And I'm just glancing at his record, and I don't see anybody that is a name that jumps out at me that he beat. Now, Valdez, actually that win by Valdez over Scott Quigg was very impressive, because Valdez got his jaw broken in that fight. Right. And Quigg missed weight and probably outweighed him by 25 pounds, and he hung in all the 12 rounds with a broken jaw and still beat him. So there's no question that Valdez is a really tough hombre. So Yeah, I agree. I think 3-1 is fair. But right, Frank, you're making a good point. We really don't know what we're getting with the opponent against Valdez, because we don't know. He hasn't fought really anybody. He's only had 16 fights. ESPN will probably try to build him up as much as they can while the broadcast is on to make you go, oh, wow, well, it's like they normally do. Drive me crazy, but that's what they'll probably do. But yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder when a guy's only had that many fights. I mean, now when we get off done recording the show, I'm going to go check it out and find out why he's only had it.
I'm checking it out right now. He was
Okay.
63. He's from Brazil, and his amateur career is 63-19.
Okay.
So as I'm just scrolling down it real quick, I saw two names that popped up at me that he lost. He lost to Gary Russell Jr. in the amateurs, and he lost to Guillermo Rigondeaux. Those are the two things that I see.
Not two losses to those guys, not a problem.
Yeah.
That's
it looks
not
like
bad.
Rigondeaux was his first fight in 2007. Gary Russell Jr. was in 2008. And then it's kind of peppered with people that, fighting in Havana, fighting in Mexico City, fighting in San Juan, fighting in Guadalajara, Warsaw, amateur fighting. So, you don't know. You don't know whether, obviously he took it seriously. He fought 63-19. So,
He turned pro late, huh? He was like 26, 27 when he turned pro. So maybe he didn't want to turn pro, and then he decided, maybe I am going to turn pro. Might have been as simple as that. It might take him a few years off. I don't know.
So let me ask three questions real quick prior answers. First of all, what's the weight? What are they fighting at?
We are fighting this at super featherweight, if I'm not mistaken.
Super featherweight.
So what is that? 126,
130.
130. Okay, cool. All right. Second question is,
I think might be 126. You might be right.
Okay, 126. Okay, but second question is, does he have a belt?
No,
he does not.
Surprisingly, he does not have a WBA belt.
Okay. The reason why I asked that question, because I'll get out this real quick. If he had a belt, my question is, considering what he's having before, why wouldn't he fight Gary Russell Jr.? Anyway, moving forward. That's just an observation of belts, titles, trying to get back on track. Guy you already beat. Time for a little redemption. Those things. That's my promoter slash fight I need to see mindset right now. But go ahead.
Well,
it is 130, by the way. It is 130.
He's 5'10.5" fighting at 130.
Yeah,
which is, at the age of 32, that means that's his weight. You're not trying to make 130 at the age of 32 and you're 5'10.5". So that's not a stout person, I would assume. But again, we'll see what happens. All right. Now, coming up, we're gonna break this down two different ways. I know, but let's look at this for what it is. This is something and we went to the Jake Paul thing last week, and even though we didn't want to, we did. Let's look at what's coming up on Saturday. Well, it's supposed to be Oscar De La Hoya and Vitor Belfort, former MMA guy against whatever the hell you want to call Oscar De La Hoya. De La Hoya's out from COVID, and now we've got Evander Holyfield, which I'm not sure I like that either, but anyway. But here's more of the question I have, not necessarily the fight and the substitution, all that. We're looking at this is on, again, I don't know where you find this, and I have to check it out. And some people are going to crucify me for saying this, but it's on Triller Fight Club on pay-per-view. Now, we have been saying for well over a year now that the powers that be need to be challenged by somebody because they're not giving us what we want, how we want, and maybe it's because of Top Rank, maybe it's because of Golden Boy, maybe it's because of PBC, maybe it's because of this, because of that. We don't know that, Matchroom. It may be because of that, and they just get what they get. And we thought maybe the zone was the answer. And the zone seems to be playing ball with everybody else as well. Like it or not, Triller Fight Club is out there trying to stir the pot. I don't know whether they're stirring it in a positive way, but they're trying to stir the pot. They're saying, we're going to put on stuff. We're going to give you names that you know, and we're going to give you something. Is this good or bad, John? Because in this card, we've got Holyfield Belfort, Anderson Silva and Tito Ortiz, and David Haye. Those are five names you know. if you know anything about combat sports. They may not be in their prime, they may not be what you would hope, but they're giving us something. And maybe their plan is down the road, we've got you in the door, now we're going to bring everything with it. Is this something that we need, or is it something that's a necessary evil, or let's just ignore it?
Well, as a boxing writer, the only fight that I'm really interested in is Andy Vences and Joan O'Carroll, because Vences is a local guy. I saw him fight when he was younger. He lives right over in San Jose, not far from me. So I'm interested in that. See, I personally think, and I know people aren't going to like this, but it's just my opinion. I'm old school. I think these are more freak shows than anything else. I do. I'm not going to say I hate it, but I do understand what you're saying, Frank. And I thought I would never say this too, but it kind of feels this way because all this that you guys have been pushing for a while is not happening as much as I was hoping. It feels like boxing is kind of dying to me right now. I thought I would never say that in a million years, but these kind of shows are generating more interest than the real fights, the real good fights. Like we said, Fury Wilder, we've heard nothing. So then we can either equate that to the promotion or the interest. So going back on your point, Frank, this is very planned, obviously, by the promoters to put names that a lot of people know, not just us. People know Holyfield. People knew Oscar De La Hoya, of course. So then you got David Haye, who's kind of coming back. Why, I don't know. Anderson Silva. So you got a crossover thing going, right? So you're trying to pull in boxing fans and MMA fans. Then you got one really good. The Vences Carroll fight could turn out to be a really good fight. Right. So you've got that. So on one hand, you say, damn, these guys know what they're doing, you know? And the other hand, there's me over here going, freaking guys, I mean, you're disgracing, you're hurting the sport, you're turning everything into a freak show. And then if it was one of these guys that was promoting it, they'd say, oh, John, get your head out of here. You know what? We got a real fight. We got Vences Carroll. I mean, so what? We got that's what people want to see. And I go, okay, so we're a circus. And he'd go, yeah. So it's I don't like it, but it is what is now the thing. And the thing to me is hurting legitimate boxing.
Well, Charles, looking at this from a historical perspective, which is odd to say because it's happened in my lifetime. We remember the first few years of ESPN, cable television, where you actually have the cable connected to the box and the remote and all that stuff. I mean, you know, all the stuff that was just seemed wild to think about at this time. Basic programming on ESPN was World's Strongest Men, stuff like that. We're talking about the circus, as John said. We're just going to try and put eyes on what we do. And now they may have had an idea that they were going to be able to cover U.S. Open tennis, which was just on ESPN, World Cup soccer, and all this other stuff that they eventually would get to that point, but they had to start someplace. Is this maybe the starting off point, or the jumping off point for something? Or is it just as John said, the circus, just to see what we have?
That's a great question. Thank you, Frank. But I see overall, I think part of it might be generational too. You know, Frank, it was mentioned by John that you know, they're telling John Triller saying, hey, John, people want to see this. We bring in the circus. This is what it is. And I said, I think it makes a point to what I mentioned before on the show about the difference between boxing and entertainment. This is great entertainment. This is entertainment. So you want to rock with that? Triller should become the entertainment network of sports, right? So you want to see the obscure circus with boxing and MMA, come to Triller, right? You might mess with your money allegedly a little bit, but come to Triller. You want to see pay-per-view, you want to see the obscure things, because I think for us that talk about it and us as fans to keep buying into it this way, I think it's doing a disservice to what we know is boxing, because we have to accept it as fans. The younger fans, a lot of them don't know. They just hear the names and they buying into it. That's what they want to do. But the purists and the people that really respect boxing, you can just say, hey, we support you, Triller. We ain't mad at you, but when we want to see real boxing, here's what we're looking at. And even though you throw a legitimate boxing guy to fight in there, it's great. But the entertainment piece hit me again when they came back. First, we were excited looking at De La Hoya. He in shape. Everybody talking about everything's awesome. Okay. Then he catch COVID. Okay, or whatever, and he's not well. Then here's what they do to insult your intelligence. But again, a circus. They bring in Evander Holyfield. Even though De La Hoya's biggest weight days, him and Holyfield in shape are two different anomalies, right? Two different species. But you just throw him in there like, well, hell, he always ready. Okay, that's telling me, are you just disrespecting my intelligence? Just doing it. And then you mentioned about David Hay. So, but that's what you like. You like it. I love it. But there's no way in hell you're going to tell me I can accept it as real boxing. And maybe I'm old and I'm an old fogey. I'll roll with that. Triller, do your thing, bro. People going to pay for it. Floyd Mayweather told you he was an entertainer now. He's not a boxer. You pay the money. You won't watch him go around and hold up some dude for so long so they can get their money too. Rock on, dude. Rock on it. But Triller, do that. That's what y'all do. Love it. But don't tell me that as a legitimate boxing fan that I should be excited about this and respect it. Because I can't. I'm not. And maybe I'm in a small, minute group of people and I'm an old fogey, that dinosaur watching the world pass me by. I'll be that. But you can't convince me, and every time I get a chance, I'm not disrespecting the show because I was a huge and still wrestling fan, right? I love the Bobo Brazils in the world, and that was clearly a damn circus. I watched it to that point. That's how I grew up with my grandfather, but I knew what it was. But don't expect me to go, oh yeah, this is legitimate boxing. The pause too. Nah, bro. So make your money, do your thing. Push me to the side, tell me to get the hell out of the way because you got a train coming and I'll be back on the Old West sitting back there. But don't tell me that I'm supposed to respect this as real boxing when it's not. Just saying.
Well, and I don't disagree with what either one of you said, but I'm going to throw something out there that just occurred to me. If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, was the USFL on ESPN?
I think at one time.
I think it was.
Yeah.
One time, yes.
And when we first saw it, like, what in the heck is this? Now, I'm of the age where I remember the year or whatever, year and a half of the WFL, and the AFL was when I was a little kid, barely even cognizant of what was going on. So that was the first adult version of alternative football that I saw that I could actually choose to watch or not watch. And as an adult, I said, this isn't the NFL, this is stupid. Right. And then you start seeing the Jim Kellys and the Reggie Whites and the Kevin Macks and these guys that end up being legitimate NFL players. And you think, maybe this isn't such a round of bull crap. And then, we can blame whomever who might be commentating on the fight for the demise of the USFL. That's another story for another time. But you can look at that and say, hey, they did something, and then it ends up being somewhat legit. Then you go to the XFL, and he hate me and all that stuff. Well, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But it could be for someone who's under the age of whatever, that this may be something that's a legitimate alternative down the road.
Right.
I don't know. I don't believe it, but it's a possibility. So they may have a game plan where they're going to say all those things that we've been clamoring for to reform boxing, maybe that's what they'll do when they get their foot in the door and are able to actually have decent fights. Maybe that's what they'll do. So I'm going to keep an open mind a little bit, not a huge bit, because, again, I don't want to see any of this card. Yeah, but it's a possibility that down the road they may grow something. It's like, remember when the first time that the NFL was on Fox? Me and the thing with the Simpsons, and you can't have football on the station. I can't even get it. So now that's where you get most of your football from. So I don't know. It could be something. And you're both shaking your head going, what the hell is he rambling about? But it's the idea of down the road. Now, again, the way they're starting out, yeah, I don't like it. I agree. But it is bringing more people, more eyes to the idea of boxing. And if, let's just say if, the fight that John's talking about, Valdez Carroll, ends up being a good fight, maybe they'll go, that's what we're supposed to see.
It should be a good fight. And you know what the other thing is that we've been saying for years now is that a lot of the problem here is the promoters. They don't make the fights, or the fighters don't take the fights. Whoever's fault it is, we don't get the big fights that we're begging for. We get some fights, we don't get them like we used to, and there I go again. It is a bit of a generational thing. So they have to take some responsibility for this too, by allowing this to sneak in. What they're trying to do is attract the young folk. Right. Now, I don't know do you guys know what the numbers were for the Jake Paul, Woodley, whatever you call that, the pay-per-view numbers?
I don't, but it wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad, see? So probably better than, and this is better than when Andre Ward fought Sergey Kovalev, which was a great matchup, but it didn't do anything in pay-per-view. So these guys, as I said, they've got an idea what they're doing. And it might be the thing in the future, unless, Jake Paul, when he gets beat, that'll be the end of that. Hopefully that soon. All right, Jake. But I'm trying not to be that mean this week. But this is going to keep going as long as it's successful. And this card, if this guy who's fighting David Haye, Joe, whatever his name is, he's 9-0. If he went, I get what you're saying, Frank. It's possible because when you made me think when you're talking about Reggie White and these guys that came out, one of these guys on one of these so-called cards could be a diamond in the rough. Right. And he that's what I know what your point is. He could be like Kurt Warner was playing like minor league football or something, and boom, he gets in the NFL and wow, he's leading the St. Louis Rams right to the Super Bowl. One of these guys, who knows? Maybe they're better fighters than we think. This guy beats David Haye, even though David Haye is as old as dirt. No, he's not. He's not even as old as us, but nearly as old as us. But if he wins, the point is, and he looks really good, he might use that as a springboard. And the Andy Valdez Carroll fight, if that's a really good fight, I don't think David Haye would be fighting this guy if he didn't think he thought he was that good.
He's going to get touched, right?
Yeah, so it's unlikely, but I see your premise. I understand that. I guess it's possible that something like that could happen, but somehow you're going to have to do what Charles is suggesting, and I don't think it's going to happen. Separate it, because boxing is entertainment, but supposedly we have levels of entertainment. So the way you would have to separate the levels of entertainment and say, look, this is an exhibition show. This is a real. People are going to go, I don't care as long as I'm entertained. And that's the problem. Then the big fights and the good fighters that we are always talking about who never get the PR. Remember, we talked about that. They're forgotten about. The junior middleweights, for example.
Right.
Nobody talks about them. The guys who got talent. Any of those junior middleweights, okay, Jake, any of those junior middleweights would knock him into tomorrow by the first round. We know that. But who's getting all the hype?
Right.
Jake Paul is. That's the part I hate. That's why I can't stand this. It's not earned. It's a given to give it to him, and it shouldn't be. It should be earned by your talent, not by the fact that you can talk more and get followers on social media. It's backwards as far as I'm concerned.
Well, according to Jake Paul, depending upon what outlet you look at, it was between 1.3 and 1.5 million buys. And Dana White says that's not even close, but DAZN hasn't said what it was yet. So now,
now that's a good sign, Frank. If they haven't said, that means it's not Jake Paul's not being truthful, which is no surprise. Dana White,
fabricated a number and said that's what it was. Now,
it's still pretty good though.
You made a distinction here, and Charles made it earlier, that we bill ourselves as Ultimate Sports Network, sports entertainment, sports talk entertainment. We aren't breaking news. We don't have the insiders in there that are saying this is going to happen. If we give you something, it's because it's entertainment. We're not giving you what we consider to be journalistic integrity. We're trying to be as integrated, if that's the right way of putting it, have as much integrity as we can, as we should, but we're not breaking stories. We're not doing what the media is supposed to do in that genre. Whereas other people are saying, breaking news, hot takes, like, no, you're regurgitating what someone else has said. We're being upfront and transparent about what we're doing. We're sports talk. We talk about sports. We're not making sports. We're not dictating things. So the same thing of what Charles is saying, this isn't boxing, it's celebrity boxing entertainment. Look at it as what it is. Don't think of it as what you're lumping in with. This is the WBA, WBC. We're trying to fight for a belt here. So I think that's important. Something else we're looking at, that kind of concept of hype and bombast and all that we're used to seeing. Charles, it's not there. Is the Fury Wilder fight going on?
According to what they say, yes. If I could throw one last little thing about that anecdote we just talked about, you mentioned before about how the alternative leagues to the NFL popped up and brought up some different folks. One thing we can say consistently, without a doubt, and maybe it's different because I do still think it's generational, is the fact that those alternative leagues have really made it consistently where it was a true threat to the NFL. Was it on the side of it? Was it always going to be around? Something always pops up, and you might see one or two things. Yeah, and that's great. But I think that, too, when you think about the alternative boxing thing, I think it has its place, or celebrity boxing has its place, because there are things that are interesting. Like right now, for all of the people talking about the Pauls and whatnot, for those that love them, there are a lot of people that want to see them go down. So in this entertainment, where I heard something recently where one of the Pauls were talking about now they were messing with the UFC fighter Jorge Masvidal, right? Who's really known for throwing his hands, and said he wouldn't mind boxing either one of the Pauls and beat the hell out of both of them, which I'd be intrigued to see. So therefore, now you bringing me in, because not saying that before that we didn't see that before in the last fight with the Pauls, but this is a guy that is no nonsense and really has a chance to win. And now he's talking about he think he can get Dana White to connect with them, which means more money. So now we talking money. Now it becomes more intriguing. So, but I think that's what I said with Triller. It comes down to the way that it was. I think that's their angle that it should be. But then again, maybe I'm that old fogey. But getting back to the point.
Let me cut you off real quick, because let me add this before you segue to the next thing. Also, when we were looking at the USFL, and this is in the early 80s, they weren't rolling out Red Grange and Jim Thorpe. They weren't bringing guys that had played 30 years ago. They weren't throwing out Eric Estrada versus Danny Bonaducci on, playing right tackle. I mean,
Rick Williams and Danny Bonaducci, Frank.
Right, exactly. they had legitimate football players playing, and I think that's the difference. I'm just saying that I think that's the difference of what we're talking about here.
Right, but let me throw this out though.
Sure.
I agree with that 100%. But regardless of the fact of who came out the league, none of those leagues ever lasted. So they really were doing. I guess what I'm saying is if they really were all that and they were going to be a subset, which I think legitimately, I've always said this. I won't make this too long. I've always said this, and I think that's the issue with the NBA and other groups are looking at now. If you ever had a solid secondary league that was kind of leading up to with a bunch of talent that could be a subset of leading into these major leagues, then I think it's legit. And I agree with you. They have had some quality players, but there's something behind it when the league doesn't stand. Maybe it's the money. Maybe it's the lack of organization with the money for it to do that. I mean, you're seeing that now with the NBA, with all these other leagues that they're trying, where you're starting to see legitimate players coming out of there and going over to the next level. But I think there's still something missing. So I agree with you 100%. But as you mentioned with the segue, though, I think part of it is that they are now, for some reason or another, the powers that be, particularly with the media, they're so desperate for news and this so-called entertainment that it allows the alternative with the celebrity boxing and stuff to jump in, because the amount of time that we wait between the fights is so damn long. People want to see something. So they go,
And-
well, hell, here you go. We got something. So yeah. So when the big things come up like this with the Wilder Fury fight, everybody want to see that damn fight. They know it. Everybody is waiting because that fight leads to something else, hopefully, if Joshua wins, or something else, or something else. It's so many questions. And maybe they're doing it on purpose, but they're losing out because there's so much more open space for other things to come in. But when they do open it up and do let it happen, the masses will come. We know that people are going to watch Wilder and Fury. It makes sense. It's the third fight. Could be, maybe they're waiting too damn long, but the eyeballs are going to turn on. They're going to make a lot of money. Question is, are we going to see it?
Well, and John, we'll leave it at this because there are a couple things that he said that make me curious. And a very valid point that the other league, the NFL versus the AFL, the NBA versus the ABA, you were going up against an established league. What is the established league in boxing? We had the WBA, WBC, and WBO or whatever for a while. Then we added the IBF, and I've getting my time frame mixed in here. Is there room for another whatever, another belt? Because a lot of people say that we're looking at the Ring Magazine rankings as opposed to this. That's the true champion. Is there room for another, or I'm not saying we need one, but I'm not saying that the Jake Pauls and this are what we need in this, but controller shoehorn their way in and say, you guys don't have a legitimate whatever. Maybe we can make something else out of this.
Accident outside. That's why I went like that. If you create a league like the Celebrity Boxing League and then crown a champion, I'd have no problem with that if that's what you want to call it. But that's what it is. And again, I think that's why it bothers me. I brought up Barry Williams and Danny Bonaducci because I watched it.
Sure.
Ah!
I watched it, yeah.
These are two guys I watched. Well, I didn't watch the Brady Bunch much, but I did know that Barry Williams was in it, and I did watch the Partridge Family more and Danny Bonaducci. And Danny said he was going to kick Barry's butt. I thought it was funny, and he did. So I guess there is a place for that, but you need to separate it from what's happening now, I think. But see, I don't think the rules apply anymore. I think it's all about, as we know, money. And if they get interest like they've gotten with Jake Paul and his brother, then they're going to keep doing these things until they lose, like I said. But then that's not going to be it. That might be it for them, but there's going to be more.
Right.
And soon we're going to be like the Real Boxing Show fights. And Frank and Charles will be going at it, and I'll be the referee. I mean, that's how ridiculous it's getting, and that's what I don't like. See, because I think it's disrespectful to a sport that a lot of people don't have a respect for, boxing, which I have a boatload of respect for because of the fighters, what they put on the line. That's forgotten over the entertainment part. And the people that have died, we just had a young 18-year-old young lady die in the ring. Last week. This is dangerous stuff here. You don't play boxing, as somebody smarter than me said. So it bothers me to no end the lack of respect as I see it and carelessness of some of these things. But I know what they're doing. I know it's money. Boxing has always been like this. So there's really no way to control this because boxing doesn't have a commission, Frank. So if they had a commission, they could say, okay, that's over there. We're not worried about that. We've got our fights here. And again, summing up, it's boxing's fault. They've had chances to do things for the last 80 years and they won't do it.
Well, Charles, and I said we'll get out of this, but okay, here's the situation. We mentioned that we haven't heard anything really about the Fury Wilder fight. Do we have to? See, there's where we're used to the circus now. We're used to all this mess, the stuff that Triller's doing, or at least that, again, I'm not disparaging them, but the hype and the build-up and the Jake Paul and this and all that. And it looks like maybe we're just going to have a fight. You don't have people running around in monkey suits and yelling and screaming a bunch of stuff for this fight. And maybe it's legit, maybe it's not. But is this, I mean, did it used to be, hey, the fight's going to be next month. We have the weigh-in on Friday. We talk a little mess there, and then the fight comes up. So is it because of a lack of promotion, or is it because it doesn't need any promotion? Because we're going to watch it. Fight fans are going to watch it. You don't need to build this fight up any more than it already has been, or than it already is. So is this more of what a legitimate fight should look like? Because the reason I believe that these other celebrity things have happened, because that's the way we build up most of the fights now.
Well, I'll say this, that maybe it is a new way, right? Because this is the third fight. You know, we know we've had the first two times. It was a lot of excitement, a lot of entertainment. There was a lot of surprise. You know, it was shocking the second fight because we didn't think a lot of people didn't think that was going to be the outcome. So this third fight, maybe the third fight is speaking for itself, right? We're looking at the precautions of making sure they go forward because the COVID situation, they're taking that into consideration. But as you mentioned, maybe it doesn't need a lot of hype. I don't think it needs a lot of hype. I think that hype is what we're used to. It's what we want. I mean, we want to know. We're nosy, right? We're nosy people. But sport fans are nosy. They want all of the hype. They want to be intrigued. They want to buy in. So the more you give me, the more I'm going to buy in and salivate for 3 weeks. Oh, he going to kill him. He going to knock his head off. It's great promotion. But on the flip side, from a marketing standpoint, if you're quiet, and then all of a sudden, a week and a half out, or 2 weeks, or whatever, boom, 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 boom. Then you go, oh my God, the fight is coming. And we talk about it. Other people talk about it. And then even if it's a week out, oh man, we're glued because we've been waiting. We complain, we mention about how pissed off, can't believe they're doing this. Well, we deserve better. We're the fans. But truthfully, they know that when we come in, we're going to be there. Because we came before. They know we're buying in because we're going to watch. It's just how much they're going to give us. And we'll complain and other fans will be mad about it and talk about I'm pissed to the highest level of pissivity. But when it comes Saturday or Friday or Thursday, whatever they give us, we're going to tune in. And they know that. And I think that's great marketing. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or whatever they're doing. But right now, they got us by I'll leave it right there. They got us by and they know it. And all we can do simply is wait.
Well, I tell you, here's how we're going to end this. Because we have things that we want to promote for later and things we want to bring about what's going on and all that. Here's how we're going to do this. Tune in next week for